I think most VCs, especially ones who haven't founded companies and been successful, should stick with Series A and beyond. There are outliers, and some of them are investors in Superhuman, some are LPs in my fund, some of them are mentors to myself. But there is a night and day difference in interfacing with an investor who has started a company. When you have investors who haven't built companies before, they categorically will give bad advice at that 0 to 1 stage.
Vivek, welcome to the Slice Pod, where we uncover the stories of fresh emerging managers across the early stage venture landscape. You're the founder and general partner of Supercharge, a 15 million pre-seed fund investing 3 to 500K checks in technical founders building across enterprise, AI, productivity, and developer tools. How do we get here?
My career started in college. I was a chemical and nuclear engineering major at Berkeley, hard pivoted into tech my senior year, started first company out of college circa 2006. So I'm dating myself here. That company was called Rapleaf. It went through various pivots. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was a lot of eating glass and kind of going through the rite of passage as a first-time founder. That company went through a couple different pivots, ultimately became an ad tech company that we rebranded to LiveRamp. I left in 2012. It went public in 2018. My role was jack of all trades. I did everything besides writing code. I owned a lot of the operational functions and towards the tail end, a lot of the sales and GTM functions in the company. Stepped away, started a second company. I had a lot of folks in the market, peers tell me, Vivek, you'd make a great CEO. You should start your own company. I let some of that feedback get to me. So I embarked on my own and started Airseed, which is a developer platform. You hadn't heard of it because we never got to product market fit. And after raising a little bit of seed capital, shut down that company almost 3 years after its founding. So that was a very painful experience. But like my journeys thus far, it was a rite of passage, kind of going through that failure as an entrepreneur. Greatest self-awareness exercise. I learned I'm not meant to be a CEO. I love being a founder, but my place is to be a CEO whisperer. I love building, I love founding companies, and I've developed an aperture around what makes for really great CEOs. The day after I shut down that company, my co-founder of my most recent company, Superhuman, Rahul Vora, and I had known each other for many years. He was departing LinkedIn and thinking about his next company, and he pitched me on the rebuilding email for the billion plus professionals. I wasn't thinking about fixing email. Time is a resource I constantly obsess about. I'm always thinking about time management. I love the productivity space. I saw greater productivity with Superhuman. And so we started the company in 2015, scaled the company across multiple rounds. First round did our seed, A16Z led our B, and Mark Andreessen himself joined our board. IVP did our C. And so towards the tail end of Superhuman, I started to actively angel invest. I knew I was going to the other side of the table as an investor. The form factor wasn't clear. Was I going to join an existing firm or would I start my own? And so I started to get really active with angel investing circa 2020, 21, and 2022, and increasingly invest in the enterprise AI space as a pre-seed seed investor, and quickly realized this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I don't think anybody that listens to this podcast doesn't know what Superhuman is, so we're not going to do a plug for it. If you don't know it, then probably listening to the wrong podcast. Was it always obvious that it was going to be that big? It was always culturally, at least in Silicon Valley, extremely relevant. From the very first seed round, it was something everybody knew about and probably projected bigger than the reality of the business. By business, I mean the actual revenues, potential of growth and everything else. And by the time that this comes out, everybody knows that you have now merged with Grammarly, building this future super app, competing with the big cloud workspace alternatives out there. Did you know as you were building it, how big of a deal it was? Was it obvious to you?
When Rahul was telling me about this idea he had for rebuilding email for the billion plus professionals, and we started to go really deep, he said something that got me so excited. Every time I think about it, I actually relive the goosebumps that I felt. He was like, Vivek, it's unlikely that you and I are going to find solutions to famine or war, cure cancer or AIDS, or take mankind to Mars, but we can create tools that augment humans' capabilities with software and tools, give them superpowers and make them superhuman. And that just clicked for me. I remember being at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco when he was telling me this, and I closed my eyes and I saw the next 10, 20, 30 years. And when I opened my eyes again, I was like, okay, this is the best thing I had come across in my career, to the point where I had to convince Rahul. I was like, Rahul, we should do this together. And he was reticent at first because he didn't have a mental model for bringing on a non-technical, non-product focused co-founder at the time. But I saw it. And I've had instances of that in my life where I see these opportunities. I'm willing to bet the farm on this. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room, but when it comes to decision making, I think that's one of my superpowers. It was important that we cultivate the right conditions for us to become successful and not let external third-party factors control our destiny. We ourselves had to control our destiny. And so that meant hiring the right team. That meant codifying a culture. I'm really proud of the company and how we built the systems and processes that I now relate to other founders, a set of core values and building the right culture within the organization. And that chip on my shoulder from the failure of my second company into Superhuman around product market fit, we developed this methodology and this framework, the Superhuman Guide to PMF, that we end up open sourcing to the community. And that was for our own needs. All the literature out there were lagging indicators, and we uncovered this approach that leveraged a leading indicator of insight that led to a product market fit. I think we tapped into a certain phenomena around luxury software for knowledge workers and professional consumers or prosumers, targeting a particular segment of the market, our ICP, where founders, CEOs, investors, executives. These people are highly functioning, wield a lot of purchasing power internally and social influence externally. These are aspirational people. Like, folks who report to them aspire to be like the CEO of the company and want to leverage the tools. And so it was this combination of targeting a particular type of customer, which are really high value folks, VIPs in the market. We weren't going after sales recruiters, sales folks, recruiters, marketers, et cetera, who do a lot of email. We're targeting the segment within an organization whose needs were currently being unmet with a lot of the tools that are available for sales and recruiting and marketing enablement for email. So we're targeting a particular segment of the market, and our motion in the pursuit of retention and the first-time user experience really led us down this path of delivering this white glove onboarding treatment, which got popularized. And you now start to see circa 2017, 2018, 2019, a lot of startups were just like, we're doing the superhuman onboarding, and that's how they were terming it. But we had to take this approach because humans are bad at changing their own behaviors, especially when it comes to deeply enveloped behaviors and bad practices, especially around email. And so because humans are bad at changing their own behaviors on a self-serve basis, we have to take this approach of delivering this white glove treatment and this white glove onboarding, where the founders, myself and Rahul in the beginning, were onboarding each person one by one and spending an hour with them, to the dismay of many of our investors who were like, what are you doing? Right? That's not how you approach your go-to-market and your growth. It was
at the time, freemium was the way to go. Product-led growth meant put it in the ether, build it and they'll come. And you did the opposite, where you built it and then turned them away.
We were maniacal about PMF, hyper-intentional about that pursuit. So we developed a level of precision very early on around who we thought we would get to product market fit within that initial ICP. We were very discerning. We iterated multiple times a day, multiple days a week. We were constantly iterating and tweaking. But there were folks who signed up on the wait list where we're like, you're never getting off the wait list. And there are folks who sign up on the wait list late and then they get off the wait list quite early because they end up matching and fitting what the ideal profile looks like. And so for us, what that did was create a velvet rope around the company, and folks were in line trying to get in. They viewed us as being snobby or exclusive. It's not coming from that place. It's coming from a place of we have very limited humans in the company to do one-to-one onboardings. We can't just open this up, because if we opened it up, what's going to happen is you're going to get a deluge of customers and feature requests and bugs and issues, and that's going to compromise the experience for them. It's going to compromise the brand. So we're intentional about onboarding each person one by one, doing things that don't scale, and then figuring out how to scale. But because of who we went after, how we engage with them, there started to be this aura around the company, coupled with a co-founder who's eloquent, has a British accent, cool fashions, rocks leather.
The leather. Even Jensen has borrowed from Raoul.
Right, exactly. But he's phenomenal with creating this reality distortion and speaking. It's a combination of speaking, starting to build a brand, starting to be the face of the company, the aura that was created as a result of what we're building and who we're building for. And then because our ICP were founders and investors, you had a lot of VCs who were seeing Superhuman. We had a lot of folks circling around us, which led us to raise a great seed round from first round. We had our pick of who we wanted to lead our Series B. That was Andreessen Horowitz. And so that just further added to this aura that was created. And then we were building product in a way and continue to open source how we did what we did. And I think folks in the market started to see, and founders started to see, there's not just one way to build an enterprise company. There is this company, Superhuman, that's taken this approach. There's probably some lessons to be learned here. I have this saying that a startup is a series of experiments and the summation of these experiments to unlock psychology in the markets and a customer. We figured this out at that point in 2015 all the way through 2025. We figured out this approach, and it demystified this way of company building as founders. And yeah, it's definitely one of the things I'm most proud about in my career is the journey and the masterclass I saw firsthand with building Superhuman.
Turn your failure into a superpowered led you to this product market fit obsession that trickled into this cultural phenomenon. You're right, $30 a month at the beginning. You guys were taking the piss. Now the superhuman professional is probably spending $300 a month in subscription tools like Claude, ChatGPT, Figma, Notion, blah, blah, blah. If anything, like it's feels cheap, where it used to feel like who's ever going to spend $30 a month for an email client, right?
Would you use a free plastic butter knife to cut a steak or invest in nice steak knives? You want the best tools because time is scarce. We can't buy time back. If you have a tool that saves you, in Superhuman's case, we were saving folks on average an hour a day. When they think about $30 a month and then you distill that down to $1 a day, right? What is an hour a day of your time worth? Probably hundreds of dollars. When you reframe it that way, people are like, okay, that makes sense. It was important that we weren't mapping ourselves to Gmail or comparing to a product like that, which was more mass market for casual users. That's for mom and dad.
When did you know it was the right time to step back and do something else? When did it feel like, okay, I've seen it, I've done it. I now see myself spending more time on the weekends doing my angel investing and having more fun than Monday to Friday, going through my staff meetings and one-on-ones and strategy calls.
My role at Superhuman was to take every function not writing code and build it from 0 to 1, and then find someone who can scale it from 1 to N, and then fire myself from that role. It started with recruiting. I hired the first 30 people, brought in a head of talent to replace myself. It was ops. I was our HR person. I owned all of our finances, legal. I did our SOC 2 compliance. I was also our first customer-facing person and built out a lot of the systems and processes, and brought in Carlton to take over, and then fired myself from that role. As I continued to build up and fire myself, which came through deep self-awareness, but there are founders who are destined to be specialists. And for me, that is not the type of founder that I want to be. I'm more of a generalist. So as I continue to do this and started to see the path towards going from prosumer to enterprise and starting to unlock those areas and towards the tail end, I started to get a sense that there was going to be an expiration date with my being at Superhuman. I also was getting restless because the problems that we were tackling at scale became less interesting to me. I love the ambiguous problem where most folks are scratching their heads. Like, I love tackling that, as opposed to figuring out how to optimize a particular metric. I remember we had this staff meeting. This was pre-COVID. Our executive staff meeting included the 3 co-founders and key heads. We were talking about one metric the entire meeting. I was like, hey, I can't do this. I knew I needed to go back to 0 to 1. It was just a matter of what's the form factor going to look like for that. And at the time, I was not interested in going back and being a founder of another company again. I'd done my tour of duty multiple times, but to actively angel invest and off of the first investment and then the second investment and then the third investment and so forth, going back to what I said about my wife pointing this out, she said to me, she's like, I could see you get a lot more energy from this than your Monday through Friday with Superhuman. And I was like, yeah, I think at this point, let's bring in, we ended up hiring 3 or 4 folks to take over the roles I was trying to do the 0 to 1 on once I left the company. But I was like very much on board with, let's bring in folks who can scale these different functions in the organization. Let me get out of the way so the company can thrive. It was a combination of early data and feelings, having these visceral moments at scale, really starting to catch the bug with investing, where I had to follow my intuition. I've outlined core values for myself, and whatever I do next needs to follow these personal core values. That transition from being an operator across almost 2 decades to an investor was very painful. A lot of tears were shed.
I want to know about the pains. We have a chapter dedicated to the pains. Why do you think the world needs another VC? You had Mark Andreessen on your board.
Yeah.
You've met every venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, whether pitching them or onboarding them on Superhuman. Been in the inside track of the top 1% of venture capitalists. What do you think you can do better than them? Or maybe it's not better, but what is it different about this? I'm assuming you're using the same product market fit analogy for your product, the value add that you bring to the capital, than the product that you built with lines of code. It needs to satisfy a certain need. What is the need that Supercharge satisfies that it was clear to you that there was a gaping hole in the market?
I think most VCs, especially ones who haven't founded companies and been successful, should stick with Series A and beyond. There are outliers, and some of them are investors in Superhuman, some are LPs in my fund, some of them are mentors to myself. But there is a night and day difference in interfacing with an investor who has started a company at the 0 to 1 stage. It's important to discern. There's the 0 to 1 art of company building till you hit PMF, and then becomes a science of company building. That PMF period is usually around seed, Series A. And I think once it becomes the science of company building and you're post PMF, you're starting to build the boundary conditions of the business. Anyone in venture, especially the ones who haven't founded companies, they will pattern match against their portfolio, against their experience. As a founder, you don't need to try to recreate employee compensation or enterprise sales, et cetera. That's where most VCs can add value. Now, that inflection point is PMF. Pre-PMF, that art of company building, when you have investors who haven't built companies before, they categorically will give bad advice at that 0 to 1 stage. We had an investor at Superhuman who will go nameless. This individual had never been a founder, came from Wall Street. When we took this one-to-one onboarding approach, he would send us an email multiple times a week, all caps, cursing in the email. What are you guys doing? Open up. None of my portfolio companies are doing these one-to-one onboardings. It became a distraction internally because he was sending this email to a shared company inbox. So I had to have lunch with him and be like, hey, here is the data shows Here's why we're doing what we're doing. And once I walked him through it, he was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I had to tell him respectfully, please stop emailing. This is a distraction. We know what we're doing. We're not first-time founders. We've done this multiple times. And I'm a big believer that founders are closest to the product and the customer. It takes a particular type of investor who's been there, done that before, who can respect that, who can basically say, my job isn't to control, my job is to influence. I understand you're closer to the data than I am. What I'm doing with Supercharge is being this fractional founder to help founders with three biggest pain points: product market fit, fundraising, and recruiting. Pretty much 99.99% of investors don't have experience with PMF and don't have experience building out a methodology and a framework where they can surgically analyze and diagnose what PMF means. I don't follow who else is on the cap table. I'm the market maker. I believe alpha exists at the earliest stage. Investing in enterprise AI, productivity, and developer tools, where I expect 2/3 of the companies I invest in to be Bay Area based, valuations tend to be pretty high kind of coming out of the gate. And so that requires me to get in as early as possible. The founders I like to invest in are the ones that are ultimately going to become successful. My job is to supercharge them from 0 to 1 and give them playbooks, give them best practices, share these anecdotes so that they're not making the mistakes that I've made in the past or I see many founders have made over the years. I can probably count on one hand the number of pre-seed investors who understand PMF and how to get there. Most other pre-seed investors will use their Rolodex and say, I can help you with fundraising, I can help you with recruiting, but very few can actually go in and be like, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's actually diagnose, are you talking to the right ICP? Are you asking the right questions? What does your data collection look like? What is the discipline around this? How are you asking questions? How is this tied to the product roadmap? That right there is the product market fit piece, the ability to be a fractional founder on demand and really roll up my sleeves. Those are definitely differentiated, and why I felt this needed to exist in the market to counterbalance the plethora of really bad noise. I look so much noise from folks and investors who read tech Twitter, giving bad advice to founders. Early founders at the early stage, it behooves them to bring on folks on their cap table who have founded companies before. I see this in the first 30 seconds to 1 minute of talking to a founder who's pitching, where I will front load and add value. I've been in their shoes multiple times over, and it's a black box and it's frustrating dealing with investors. I tell founders, don't think of me as a traditional VC. I'm a founder building a fund, and I'm in the trenches with you.
Okay, this is going to be the same kind of like rant as your Wall Street investor guy. How is this scalable? How much can you actually be involved in this kind of companies and this idea of a fractional co-founder?
Yeah.
Your portfolio model, like, it's not that concentrated. You're still looking for 20 plus bets. How can you be everywhere at once? You have 2 kids, you have a wife, and you're still involved in the community on a number of levels. You're running the fund as a solo GP, which means there is a lot more. Does it scale? Can you do 6 vintages in a row of this strategy? Is it practicable?
Fund 1 is 15 million. Fund 2, which I will go out and start fundraising end of 26, early 2027, that will be on the order of 20 to 25 million. I'm not interested in a big fund or a series of funds and playing the AUM game. I'm more interested in playing the carry game and having the best returning fund of all time, as opposed to raising a big fund and banking off fees. I think creates perverse incentives in the market from LPs to founders. I'm a big believer that less capital is a feature, not a bug. In the context of my Fund 1, where I've invested in 8 companies thus far, I've done 1 follow-on investment, and that will be out of 20 companies. For Fund 1, I'm investing in 6 companies a year. I look at 400 companies a quarter. I invest in, on average, one to 2 companies per quarter. That gives me time to be hands-on. The average graduation rate to subsequent rounds is about 2 years, going from pre-seed to seed, seed to A, and so forth. Early on, founders I invest in often need help with positioning, need help with their deck, connecting with investors. And then Post that period, then it's switching gears on demand basis. Yes, let's go dive in and making sure you're talking to the right customer and kind of prepping founders for that initial design partnership call and kind of some of the things that come with that. And then more towards scale, it's like subsequent fundraising rounds and like building out the operations within their organization, how they should think about culture. Maybe there's like a particular HR personnel issue that they want feedback on and jumping on a call. Fortunately, I'm not investing in 100 companies in the fund. I'm being intentional about spacing out the companies I invest in over a 4-year vintage. So it's 36-month deployment period from summer of last year going through to summer of 2027. That gives me time to spend with founders. And there's going to be a certain point, circa Series B, where value add they get from Vivek is going to be less than they would have gotten at pre-seed. But I'm still the person they can call. I have an angel investment that, in my opinion, is the fund returner for my angel fund. That company raised a $200 million Series C on a $2 billion post, and I came in at the Seed Plus round. The founder still calls me. She called me when raising the Series B. She called me when raising the Series C. My value add has tapered off. And so it's by design where my value add will taper off once the teams get to later rounds. But I'm still the cheerleader. I'm still the therapist. I'm still the shoulder they can cry on in perpetuity. The value of investing in enterprise AI is I start to dog food a lot of the products and pitches I see in the market. I'm like, this is how I'm going to scale my fund, as if I have a 5, 7, 10 person operations team. You can now start to leverage agents. You can start to leverage automation. So that's one of the value adds investing in the space. I put on my CTO hat to build out the stack within the fund so that I can do more at scale. And it's analogous to the software engineer who has historically written code is now vibe coding and is taking 6 to 8 months of code development down to 48 hours and is moving at a blistering pace for fund managers like myself and asset managers across all asset classes. It behooves everyone in the market to spend a minimum 1 to 2 hours a day immersing themselves in a lot of the tooling and a lot of the products getting created on the AI side and what's going on with this open source model versus this closed source model, and figure out how to bake into their workflows on a day-to-day basis. If you're not, you're going to be left behind. So I'm using what I'm investing in as a forcing function to do that myself, to stay lean and operate like a scrappy founder so that I have this level of rapport and trust when I do interface with founders that I want to invest in.
What are the products that have the best promise to succeed at scale? Where do you see best founders building? Where do you see the most value getting extracted? What are the things most people get wrong about investing in this application layer for this massive AI super cycle?
I think it's important for every single meeting where I think it goes without saying to use some type of AI note-taking product, right, for your Zoom calls and whatnot. I'm not doing this in the physical world. It's helpful to pull up the Limitless app and do a search. Just having that context for in-person meetings is important. I'm increasingly leveraging Google's Notebook LM, which has been really helpful in synthesizing information, but also in the context of managing my fund and managing my portfolio, but also extracting certain insights where if I upload a 15-slide deck and a 4-page memo I can sift through and leverage market research. The products I use, Limitless, Notebook LM, Perplexity, I think these are table stakes. And folks should definitely be playing with that. Without disclosing too much, I'm going to be incubating a company in the relationship management space, and it's something I've been wanting for pretty much 10 years. And it's now at a point where I can build this out myself. I've shared some of this with other investors where they're like, when you have this, can you please give this to me? And I'm like, yes, I will make sure to share this when I have an early beta of this. But in terms of investing in the space, you have founders who are building application layer point solutions. If you're not thinking about building full stack and beyond the application layer point solution, you will be coded out of existence very quickly. With Superhuman, we put a lot of resources and time around building this really high quality email experience. And we put a lot of time into investing in the infrastructure and making sure it's the fastest experience and having that level of robustness and reliability and performance. You right now in today's market, you can't code a production level piece of software. In the context of Superhuman, we were founded pre-Chat GPT, and in this post-Chat GPT world, being at the application layer, it was important for us to bundle. I'm a big believer that any company founded pre-Chat GPT needs to bundle in order to survive and thrive, because we're at war with the market. What I see in the market today are founders who are just operating at the wrapper layer or application layer point solution level. They are very quickly going to get vibe coded out. I see easily 15 companies per category. It's very rare that I see a company that's unique that I don't see other founders tackling that space. But when I do, that gets me really excited. And I've invested in some of those companies. The founders not thinking more on a grander level. I see too many of them. I'm like, you're not thinking big enough. Your product roadmap should look like this, and you're being too myopic right now. And your approach to company building is outdated. The other piece is I've had to update my investment criteria. I now look for founders leveraging AI code gen products and tools. At least 90% of the code should be AI generated. Less than that, that's not as interesting to me. It signals to me that the founder is not adapting to this new paradigm shift. And then you have founders on the GTM side will get to single digit millions in revenue very quickly. And this is often prosumer seats where the end user is using the product for a month. The founder multiplies that by 12 and is like, this is our ARR. And then what they're not being honest about is the considerable amount of churn and the lack of retention that they have. I think this is currently in the Twitter zeitgeist right now, which is you have certain tier one funds who have multiple billions and billions and billions in AUM who are saying, you know, what's interesting is not getting a 0 to 2 million in 3 months. What's interesting is getting a 2 million in 10 days. And it's bad advice to founders. It's short-sighted and crappy revenue. It's crappy to go after that segment of the market. What's more interesting is taking the time to figure out how to sell into the enterprise and unlocking that motion where durability gets created. We're going to see some of these companies rage baiting on Twitter and hyping up like we're the fastest to get to X millions in revenue, see a massive drop off and implosion. This has happened. I'm happy to tell folks some examples. When I see in the market, I'm like, oh, this is a remix of that company and this company. And I'll talk to founders and be like, pay no mind to this. These are hype cycles. Investors who've never built companies before are subscribing to this hype cycle. Real builders build, their heads down, just ignore this noise.
Everything you're saying, it makes sense. I've been a founder, so I understand. Are all your LPs former founders? And the ones that are not, do they understand the game you're playing? You obviously have the holy fire burning hot, and that's attractive to any sort of investor, whether it's a venture investor or a limited partner into a manager. But do they understand the sophistication of the relationship between you and the founders, the sophistication of your understanding of the market dynamics? And is it obvious to everybody? Or do you have any hard times explaining this to folks?
When I launched the fund late last year, it took some iterations. I'm now at a point where I can succinctly and in a very crystal way articulate, here's what I'm doing. I think that resonates because I'm talking to LPs who invest in emerging managers like myself. I'm an ally and a net promoter of other GPs, other solo GPs in the market, and I will connect them with LPs. Through that, I do have a view into, okay, what I'm doing is a bit differentiated from a value prop point of view. It resonates more with LPs who've been founders before, where the ones who haven't been, I do have to have conversations and just be like, hey, look, I think it's important that myself, I am not subscribing to certain hype cycles, and I'm able to sift through a lot of the noise I'll share essays I've written about certain topics around company building, about the scarcity of capital in the context of a fund, so they can get a lens into how I think about things. And that's definitely has converted like pretty significant as of lately, as I've gotten much more crystallized and tighter with what I'm doing with my fund. But you still have LPs in the market who they're like, how come you're not in this company? And it's like, I wouldn't want to be in this company even if I had the opportunity to, because I think this company is going to implode and I think this company is going to flame out, right? Now, I'm not in venture to get in early and leave other investors with a bag of shit later, which is my grievance with Web3 and crypto. I'm in venture to create value. And it's important for me to invest in a company that is going to be around in 10 years and is ideally a power law returner, publicly traded, et cetera. Investing in those type of companies versus the companies that skyrocket in revenue, raise these really frothy valuations, and then selling my position in secondaries doesn't sit well with me. I'm a hardcore capitalist. I'm in venture to create value. Wealth creation is a consequence of value creation. The more I help create value, the more wealth gets created. Playing the short-term game of leaving people with a bag of crap and making money off, that doesn't sit well with LPs who see these really hypey companies and they're like, I want to invest in a manager who's getting these hypey companies to create this like short-term DPI through selling their positions once these companies get marked up. I'm interested in value creation and investing in companies that stand the test of time and add value to society. Finding the next Rahul Voras and the next superhumans in the market, like those are the type of companies I want to invest in. So there are like absolutely LPs who subscribe to that. There are others who want to play the kind of like get rich quick kind of game. That's not the game I'm playing.
It's the farmer, hunter, trader, investor. Not necessarily better or worse one than the other. There are ways to do the trader, hunter game sustainably. Obviously, you go through periods of feast and famine. You're not always in a hype cycle. You have to jump from bubble to bubble. A lot of the crypto guys are now big AI guys. And tomorrow they will be big in something else, just as exciting to the broader market. As a founder, coming from the perspective of somebody who has to build a business that is sustainable and enduring, like that's just not how you're wired. You're looking for something that extends on its own. You can't make the waves, you just learn to surf them. Do something that can surf any wave, not just a hot topic du jour. Yeah. As long as you keep the fund size small, you will find people backing you. Or you have to go super size large, which is an impossible task to go from a $15 million fund to a $1.5 billion fund. The bucket in the middle is the most destructive because if you don't get the hot wave, you're not going to be able to raise the next round. You're talking about 100, 200, $300 million funds and returning those without a hot wave. It's impossible. You slip out of the traditional 10 years holding period. You mentioned earlier that there were tiers at some point. I'm curious to get to the hardest part, not just about the transition, but raising a fund, running a fund. From the outside, other managers may think everybody knows who he is. It must be easy for him to raise a fund, wax deals, win deals, and bleed deals. Like this should be like a walk in the park. I have the feeling that it may not be as easy, but I want to hear it from you.
I've been intentional about my LP base and I turned down multiple LPs where I didn't see value or strategy alignment. I'm not just going to take money from anyone. I'm very intentional about who I partner with. I understand the value of having the right people around the table. This is a 30 to 40 year journey. I want the right folks. And I'm fortunate I can do that. I know other GPs who don't have that luxury. I've been taking my time about fundraising and making sure I have the right folks. If you're an LP at a family office or fund to fund, you're not going to get fired for investing from a Sequoia spinout or Excel spinout from a tier one fund. But if you have a founder operator who hadn't been a VC before, but has an angel track record, it's risky. Every fund to fund LP who's invested in Supercharge wanted to get to know me for 12 months. And now we're at that point where I'm doing final close next month in November. But they wanted to get to their say, are you going to stick with your strategy? You said you're shooting for 3 to 5% ownership, and here's your check size, and we want to see investment memos. And it's like, here you go. I'm doing exactly what I said I was going to do. And so for those folks, it's converting, right? The tear shed came from this decision of leaving Superhuman. And I told my co-founders a year before I left that I was going to leave the company to go into being an investor full time. So I intellectualized that decision. And then once I left, and that final day, I was an emotional mess, like in front of the entire team. I couldn't hold it together. It just all came out. It hit me like a truck. That following week, I felt lost. I was talking to my wife about this, where she was like, what do you feel like doing? I was like, well, I feel like opening up my email and checking Slack and, like looking at all the DMs from the team, et cetera. And that got ripped away. I was the patriarch in the company where everyone came to me. I was the coach for a lot of people. I'd go on walk and talks with folks on the team. That was incredibly painful. That week, I had 25 one-on-ones with folks on the team where they were like, we want to get more of the story. Every single one was like, I wouldn't be at this company if it weren't for you. And saying these words of affirmation, which would get me choked up and just like, oh, this is so tough. And so it felt like my baby in a lot of different ways, that I'm now not going to be there on a day-to-day basis. Identity change is painful. I compared it to an NBA player who their entire life, they're playing basketball. That's all they knew. And they retire, and you see the jersey hanging ceremony where they hang up their jersey. You see them crying. They're quite emotional, and then transition to be the GM or the coach, right? It was painful to walk away after almost 2 decades of being a founder operator to now changing my identity to be on the other side. My advice to founders or anyone going through identity change is have an accountability partner. My wife was that. I had hundreds of conversations with GPs, LPs, founders, and whatnot in the market that year and that year after to help with that transition, just to try to keep myself active, but also expand my mind. And that's actually where the strategy for Supercharge was born, having conversations and getting tighter around, hey, this is what I'm doing. And then having that confidence, it made that transition easier for sure. But it was very painful. For 2 weeks, I would think about Superhuman or certain folks on the team and get choked up and emotional. I've been proud of the team and so proud of the company and its kind of pursuit to, knock on wood, going public construct with Grammarly and Coda in the next 4 to 5 years.
I'm glad you're on the other side. It still hurts when people refer to me as a venture capitalist. I can't deal with it, even though I cannot deny it. We covered a lot of ground. I'm really happy because every episode is a little bit different. I think this is a reflection of who you are and what Supercharge is. And I love how we were able to really dig deeper onto the product market fit thesis, that it's so core to who you are and the investment product you bring to market. But what is one thing that we didn't talk about?
There are too many founders in the market. You have true entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs, people playing status games and ego games. This becomes apparent when I see founders creating launch videos of their fundraise, Coachella style poster boards of investors blowing money on billboard ads, pre-product market fit. To me, signals you have founders who they are in it for the wrong reasons. I would tell folks who are thinking about starting a company, are you starting a company because you're best suited to solve this pain and address this problem better than any person on planet Earth? Or are you doing this just to be a founder? The latter is less interesting. If I could, I would remove a lot of those folks from the market and just kind of like, you should be doing something else because you're creating a lot of noise. I would love to see more of those folks who were like, I'm on planet Earth to do this thing. Right? There's strong founder market fit. I've unlocked some non-obvious secrets in the market about this particular thing. Those are the folks that get me excited, not the ones who are pivoting 7 times into the next AI point solution or subscribing to hype cycles. Most people should not start companies. It takes a unique individual, like a delusional, irrational individual to start a company, speaking from personal experience. But find your place on planet Earth. But if you do find this thing that you're like, I'm willing to spend the next 20 years on, Don't subscribe to hype cycles. Just build, be heads down and build. Investors, it's tough. They're trying to invest in the next OpenAI and Databricks, so they're just throwing money around. But I would tell investors, like, watch out. As I get more public about what I'm doing and officially announce, like, there are definitely some dents I'm going to be making in the kind of venture market around early stage venture that I think is going to be an antidote to a lot of the BS and crap founders get stuck with in the markets. Watch out.
What a cliffhanger. I I love it. We're going to have to do this again, like 6 months from now, for a big reveal. This is awesome. Breaking news, everybody.
You know, if I were to advise LPs and they're looking at a founder turned GP, I would recommend that they suss out that this is someone who's in this for multiple funds for multiple decades. I come across GPs in the market who, some of them are founder turn GPs, where they're like, I'm only going to do one fund and that's it. This is not fair to some LPs making a bet on you. There are founders who value and obsess about controls, and there are founders who don't. It's potentially dangerous to invest in a founder turned GP who value control. It's going to be difficult for them to be degrees removed from the problem they're investing in. I've seen this across many founder turned investors. Some are angels, some are GPs, where, you know, in confidence, they're like, I just want to wring this founder's neck because they're not doing what I said. Well, you made this investment betting on the founder in question. Your job is to not control, your job is to influence. And that was actually from my time at Superhuman, where the best CEOs are control freaks, where they value control over product, customer, and culture. My job was to not control, but was to influence and to up-level him as much as possible and be a CEO whisperer in that regard. My recommendation to LPs in the market when they talk to the founder turned GP is, like, have some questions about how they value control. How do they assess the founders that they invest in, and, like, the founders don't listen to the GP in question or take the company in a different direction? How do they deal with that? It's not going to create a sustainable firm and subsequent funds if you as a GP have negative relationships with the founders you invest in. I don't think those people will have longevity in venture. Whenever I see someone who's especially an ex-founder who has founder CEO in particular, who has strong product chops, and they go to be a VC, not necessarily a GP of their own firm, but a VC, statistically, I'm like, that person's going to churn and go back to being an operator. I'll give it 2 to 3 years.
You've just listened to another episode of Slice, the podcast for emerging managers. Thank you so much to Vivek for joining us, and thank you to our guest from last week, Jonathan at Space, for introducing us to Vivek. Next week is Ben Zeises of Super Angel Fund. It's exactly how it sounds. Ben is writing checks as early as day 0 in consumer prop tech and future of work companies. Make sure you're subscribed to our Substack not to miss it.